Real power is knowing when failure is not permitted. Delta Force exists for the moment when an entire nation has only one option: get it right the first time or carry consequences that cannot be reversed. Delta Force is not measured by victories won, but by wars that never happened, by decisions made in silence, by consequences absorbed before the world ever became aware of them. And that is the cold truth about real power. It has already taken shape. Delta Force, however, enters the game before war is even given a name. And it is this difference in purpose of existence that makes Delta Force truly dangerous, alongside Green Berets and other special units. In reality, the formation of most modern special forces around the world largely traces back to the Munich Massacre of 1972. However, Delta Force was conceived even earlier, in the 1950s. During an exchange program between the United Kingdom and the United States, the British Special Air Service, specifically the 22nd SAS Regiment, reached an agreement with the US military. Both sides would exchange an officer to gain real-world experience inside each other's units. Under this arrangement, a British officer was assigned to the U.S. Green Berets, while U.S. Army Colonel Charles Beckwith was assigned to train with the SAS. Throughout this period, Beckwith was deeply impressed by the SAS. In 1962, he participated in an operation alongside the SAS, and their performance left a lasting impact on him. Afterward, he became determined to create a unit with a structure similar to the SAS. However, during the Vietnam War, his superiors not only rejected the proposal, but instead assigned him to area security duties. It was not until the mid-1970s, as terrorist attacks increased worldwide, that the Pentagon and senior U.S. military leadership finally authorized Beckwith to establish the unit he had long envisioned. On November 19, 1977, a unit designated as 1st SFODD was officially formed, becoming what we now know as Delta Force. Delta Force is the commonly used name of the unit. Its official designation is the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, Delta, of the United States Army. For this reason, the unit is often simply referred to as D Unit. The term Delta refers to the letter D, not to the Mekong Delta. So why is it called Unit D? Within the U.S. Army Special Forces structure, units below company level are designated as A, B, and C. The counterterrorism unit created by Beckwith was part of the U.S. Army Special Forces community, but did not fall under the standard Special Forces command structure. As a result, it was designated as Unit D. The unit is also known as CAG, short for Combat Applications Group.
In its early years, the unit was extremely small and consisted almost entirely of combat personnel. At the beginning, Delta Force had only two primary assault squadrons, known as Squadron A and Squadron B. Over the following decades, as mission demands expanded, the unit gradually increased in size. Additional squadrons were formed, and Delta Force evolved into a structure built around four main combat squadrons, designed to sustain long-term operational readiness. Today, the total strength of Delta Force is estimated to range between 800 and 1,000 personnel. However, only around 250 of them are direct action operators. The remainder serve in support roles, including logistics, intelligence, medical support, and specialized technical functions. Alongside its combat squadrons, Delta Force maintains three specialized troops, commonly referred to as E, G, and H troops. One of these units is the Aviation Troop, formerly known as SASPR. G Troop, which initially functioned as a combat support element, was later expanded to handle advanced force operations and precision mission support. H Troop serves as a dedicated support unit, bringing together specialists in explosives, weapons of mass destruction, medical care, and intelligence analysis. Delta Force maintains its own medical personnel, not only stationed at Fort Bragg, but also distributed across multiple undisclosed facilities within the United States. These teams include physicians whose sole responsibility is to provide medical support for special operations missions. On the intelligence side, Delta Force operates its own internal intelligence capability, built specifically to support the unit's missions. Although most of Delta Force's aerial support comes from the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, commonly known as the Night Stalkers, the unit also maintains its own limited aviation assets. These include a small fleet of approximately 12 helicopters, providing Delta Force with a higher level of autonomy and flexibility. Because of this structure, Delta Force is often described as a special operations force within special operations forces themselves. The selection process of Delta Force is considered one of the most demanding within the entire United States Armed Forces. From the very beginning, Delta Force selection is modeled almost entirely after the methods of the British SAS. This means one thing: Delta Force does not recruit new soldiers. It selects only those who have already been proven in combat. Most Delta Force candidates come from other U.S. Special Operations units, with approximately 70% having previously served in the Ranger Regiment. Over time, the Rangers have become the primary personnel source for Delta Force. Delta Force selection is conducted twice each year. Candidates must meet several baseline requirements. A minimum age of 22. For enlisted personnel, rank must be between E5 and E8, with at least 2.5 years of service. For officers, rank must be O3 to O4, with at least 1 year of command experience and 2.5 years of military service. In addition, candidates must pass medical evaluations for free-fall parachuting, general physical fitness test, and vision examinations. All candidates must volunteer for both static line and free-fall parachute training. But this is only the first stage. Candidates must then complete a physical assessment consisting of 6 standard events: a 40-yard backwards crawl in 25 seconds, 33 push-ups per minute, 37 sit-ups per minute, completion of the U.S. Army Standard Obstacle Course in 24 seconds, a 2-kilometer run in 16.5 minutes, and a 100-meter sprint while carrying full combat equipment. Each event must score at least 60 points to advance. Those who pass all of these tests are allowed to enter the formal selection phase. This phase is divided into 2 parts and carries an elimination rate of over 90%. For comparison, Ranger selection already eliminates approximately 75% of candidates. Delta Force then removes over 90% of those remaining. This process alone explains why Delta Force is regarded as one of the most elite units in the world. The most demanding part of Delta Force selection is not raw physical strength, but the ability to endure prolonged pressure. The formal selection phase is divided into multiple stages, beginning with long-distance movement and land navigation. The environment selected is the National Forest of North Carolina. Here, each candidate operates alone. No formation, no assistance, no guidance. In the initial stage, candidates carry 18 kilograms of equipment and march 29 kilometers. With each phase, the difficulty increases. The load becomes heavier, the distance becomes longer, the terrain becomes more complex. In the final stage, candidates must carry 20 kilograms of equipment and move 64 kilometers across rugged and forested terrain. The only tools permitted are a map and a compass. No GPS, no electronic devices, no external guidance. The defining feature of this test is that Delta Force provides no published standards. Candidates do not know how far they must travel. They do not know how many checkpoints exist. They do not know when they have passed or when they have failed. Only the evaluators know. The candidate's sole task is to keep moving, maintain navigation, and complete the march as quickly as possible. This method is not designed to measure endurance alone. Its purpose is to replicate real battlefield conditions where standards are unclear and uncertainty itself becomes a source of pressure. In such conditions, those who can maintain mental stability, retain focus, and continue forward without knowing where the finish lies are rated the highest. After completing the movement phase, candidates enter psychological evaluation. They face Delta Force officers and military psychologists. The questions are not standardized, but tailored to each individual's personal background. The goal is not to find the correct answers. The goal is to assess the candidate's ability to remain calm under sustained psychological stress. Evaluators believe that if a soldier cannot sit calmly and answer questions with with composure. That individual will not be able to maintain clarity during missions where even a single mistake can lead to irreversible consequences. Passing selection is only the beginning. In Delta Force, being selected does not mean being elite. It means being allowed to enter reconstruction. After selection, candidates move into a 6-month operator training course. This training is not designed to make stronger soldiers. It is designed to produce individuals who can make the correct decision when failure is not an option. During this phase, each candidate must master all core combat skills, weapons handling at all ranges, precision shooting in daylight, darkness, smoke, and high psychological stress, open terrain operations and close quarters combat, hallways, stairwells, confined rooms. There is no early specialization. Each operator must first become a fully capable generalist. In parallel, candidates learn to operate multiple types of vehicles: civilian cars, military vehicles, armored platforms, helicopters, and transport aircraft. They are not trained merely to use them. They are trained to replace operators, replace drivers, replace pilots, replace crew members under emergency conditions. Every Delta Force operator is trained to never become a weak link in any scenario. Alongside technical skill, the most heavily emphasized element is tactical thinking and psychological discipline. Training scenarios are deliberately imperfect. Incomplete information, ambiguous orders, severely compressed timelines. Candidates must assess risk independently, make decisions, and own the consequences. There is no room for prolonged hesitation. There is also no tolerance for impulsive action. Delta Force does not train soldiers who simply follow orders. They train individuals who understand the strategic intent behind an order. Another defining requirement is that every operator must hold at least one deep specialty: demolitions, combat medicine, explosive ordnance disposal, communications, field intelligence. Yet regardless of specialty, everyone must be ready to return to direct combat roles at any moment. In Delta Force, there is no concept of, "that is not my job." Attrition continues throughout training. Those who cannot keep pace, those who lose psychological control, those who cannot learn fast enough, they are removed, because at the level Delta Force operates, mistakes are not corrected by retries. Mistakes are paid for with lives, with political consequences, or with wars a nation never intended to fight. That is why Delta Force does not seek flashy warriors. They seek individuals capable of carrying the weight of a single decision. In Delta Force, weapons are not symbols. They are tools, selected purely for mission effectiveness. Unlike most conventional military units, Delta Force is not bound by a fixed equipment list. There is no rigid concept of a standard weapon. Each mission allows operators to choose whatever weapon best fits the situation. That means a Delta Force team may use U.S. military weapons, allied systems, or even enemy equipment, not for display, but to blend in, deceive, and control the environment. In many operations, using non-U.S. weapons helps erase fingerprints, reduce political escalation, and avoid unnecessary evidence. For sidearms, Delta Force has employed multiple platforms across different periods and missions, from legacy designs to modern pistols chosen for reliability, ease of maintenance, and performance under sustained combat stress. For rifles, the unit prioritizes accuracy, modularity, and mechanical stability in harsh conditions. This is why Delta Force early adopted systems with better control, reduced recoil, and consistent performance in sand, dust, mud, and extreme heat. In sniper operations, Delta Force does not rely solely on traditional bolt-action rifles. They also favor semi-automatic platforms that allow rapid precision fire, dynamic target tracking, and immediate response to changing conditions. This reflects a clear philosophy. Delta Force does not optimize for the perfect shot. They optimize for the right shot at the right moment. Beyond individual weapons, the support systems are where Delta Force truly separates itself. The unit has access to deep intelligence capabilities, technical intelligence, human intelligence, signals intelligence, real-time battlefield data. Information does not arrive only before the mission. It flows continuously throughout execution. This allows allows on-site commanders to adapt plans as conditions evolve. No waiting for commands to pass through multiple layers. No delays when minutes can collapse an entire operation. In aviation, while many missions rely on Special Operations Aviation units, Delta Force maintains its own aviation capability. These assets are not meant to replace large military systems, but to ensure secrecy, flexibility, and extremely rapid response. All of this leads to a central principle. Delta Force is granted an exceptionally high level of operational autonomy. They do not merely execute orders. They are allowed to adjust execution to protect strategic objectives. At this level, success is not about following procedure. Success is about preventing the worst possible outcome from ever occurring. That is why Delta Force does not operate like a conventional military unit. They operate as a national risk control instrument. The greatest difference between Delta Force and the SEALs is not individual skill, nor is it equipment or the intensity of training. It lies in when they are used and the strategic layer they operate in. The SEALs exist to act when war has already begun, when the enemy is visible, when battle lines are drawn, when the conflict has crossed the point of no return. At that stage, the objective is rapid assault, sustained pressure, and measurable battlefield results. SEAL teams are built for high operational tempo. One mission ends, another follows. Their system accepts rotation, replacement, and success measured by tangible outcomes. Delta Force is different. They are not deployed after war ignites. They appear when a single wrong decision could ignite war. Delta Force operates at the level of consequence prevention. Their mission is not merely to eliminate a target, but to ensure that the elimination itself does not trigger uncontrollable reactions. A Delta Force operation may succeed without leaving any public trace. No images, no statements, no visible victory. In many cases, silence itself is proof of success. Delta Force is not optimized for frequency. They are optimized for one decisive execution, and that execution cannot fail. At this level, a minor deviation does not just mean mission failure. It can spark diplomatic crises, military escalation, or regional instability. That is why Delta Force is granted a level of trust few units in the world possess. They do not merely represent military capability. They represent America's ability to control consequences. The SEALs win when the mission is completed. Delta Force wins when no one knows the mission ever existed. The SEALs change the battlefield. Delta Force changes whether that battlefield ever appears. And in modern warfare, where a single mistake can cost thousands of lives and years of instability, the most dangerous force is not the one that fights best, but the one that is never allowed to fail. When looking at the full picture, one thing must be made clear. Delta Force does not exist to be the strongest in the conventional sense. They were not created to fight more battles, to appear more often, or to be publicly celebrated. Delta Force was created to carry the moments where a nation is not allowed to fail. The SEALs represent action power. The Green Berets represent unconventional warfare and long-term influence building. The Rangers represent large-scale assault forces. Delta Force represents absolute strategic responsibility. They do not enter war to win it. They enter to ensure that war does not spiral out of control. In the modern world, power does not lie in firepower alone. True power lies in the ability to stop consequences before the world realizes it is standing at the edge. That is why the danger of Delta Force is not measured by how well they fight. It is measured by the fact that every time they are deployed, there is no alternative left. They are not allowed to fail. There is no second attempt, no room for correction. A Delta Force mission is not judged by what happened. It is judged by what never happened. Wars that never erupted, chain reactions that were stopped, wrong decisions neutralized before becoming catastrophe. That is why Delta Force does not need to be seen, does not need to be celebrated. Only one thing matters. The world continues to function as if nothing ever happened. In modern warfare, the most dangerous force is not the one that wins the most battles. It is the one tasked with ensuring that failure is never allowed to exist. That is Delta Force.
If you find this content helpful and valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. My name is Hai.
See you next time.